Podcasting for Beginners. If you've never made a podcast before, please listen closely. We're going to be using GarageBand as our host for our podcast. GarageBand looks like a guitar down here in your dock. If you don't see it down here, come up to your spotlight and type in GarageBand. As it loads, you're going to notice it bouncing up and down on the bottom. I want you to select New Project up on the top. And we're making a podcast, so you're going to click on that. I want you to title it using your first name, last initial, and whatever the assignment is that you are working on. Then you're creating it. GarageBand works backwards from regular documents. You need to create and save before you alter it in any way, shape, or form. To begin with your podcast, select which type of voice you need. I'm a female, so I'm choosing a female voice. To record your podcast, we can either use this red record button down on the bottom, or you could press the R button on your keyboard. I'm going to use the record button. You notice that the mouse is moving slowly across the screen, and every time I talk, the words make the little bars jump up and down on the screen. So now I'm recording what I want to say. I can review that and play it back later. Let's say I'm done with whatever I had to say so far. I can push the record button, and that stops the recording even though the screen is continuing to move. I can also use the spacebar button to stop everything from happening. To get back to the beginning, you can either hit Enter on your keyboard, or you could drag the mouse over the white triangle and bring it back to wherever you want it to be. I want to go all the way to the beginning, so I'll hit Return. Now I want to listen back to whatever it is I've recorded already. To do that, I can use the spacebar, or I can come down here and press play. I'm going to use spacebar. You notice that the mouse is moving slowly across the screen, and every time I talk, the words make the little bars jump up and down on the screen. Okay, I press the spacebar button again to stop the recording. Now you notice I stuttered a little bit in there. I'm not embarrassed. I stutter quite often. But if this is a professional podcast, I don't want other people to know that I can do that. I do have the ability to edit my podcast, to get rid of those little things that we say or do when we make mistakes. In order to do that, I'm going to use this little white part down on the bottom half. I know my stutter came right in here, so I'm going to bring my bar right over to where it happened. Now watch carefully as I go down here what happens to the cursor. It now became a plus sign. This plus sign tells me where I can make my deletions. I want it to start here, and I want it to go to where I start talking again. You could see where that's become grayed out. Now I highlighted that, and I could just hit the delete button. But now what do you think is going to happen with that big blank space? You're right, it's going to sound empty. So I have the ability now to drag my piece right back next to it and fill the empty silence. And now when I bring it back to the beginning and I re-hear it, I should listen to make sure there is no gap in my speaking. You notice that the mouse is moving slowly across the screen. Hey, that sounds a lot better, doesn't it? Now you're going to notice yourself making minor mistakes here and there. You have a couple of suggestions. You can either record in pieces and then edit those pieces, or you could record one long story like I've done here and edit out the little nuances, the little mistakes that you've made. When you're done, to save it, you come up to File and you say Save. You've already titled it, so you will not get a drop-down menu to say, what do you want to call this? Now let's say you're completely done with your podcast, you're ready to get it off to your teacher. You cannot just send GarageBand to your teacher. You have to share it as something. So I'm going to suggest you export your podcast to a disk. Leave these standards set as they are. When you hit export, it's going to come up, where do you want it to go? Change it from GarageBand to desktop. If it doesn't say GarageBand, make sure it says desktop in the end, no matter what. That way, when you save it and you go to either AirDrop it to your teacher or Dropbox it on eChalk, you'll know exactly where to find it. I'm going to minimize now to show you that my podcast is right here on my desktop. So I know when I need to submit this to my teacher or I need to AirDrop it, I don't have to go fishing around for it. It's here and it's ready to go. The rest of the features on your podcast are things that are extra, that are added on. Right now, we're not really interested in getting you to put music to your podcast or to add video or images to your podcast. We more want to introduce you to the basics. When you're ready, we'll make another video on how to add the music. Please make sure that you are saving and following the directions in this podcast so that your teachers can find and clearly identify whose podcasts are whose. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed your basic introduction to podcasting.